All right, here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Benny and the Guest. With you as always, me Ben. Today I got a very nice guest to meet. Is Stephen O'Donnell. Um, First of all, Stephen, thank you for coming on. Nice to meet you.
Ben, thanks for having me on the show today. It's been looking forward to this all week. Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Honored.
Stephen is he was an explosive ordnance disposal technician. He has started his own company. He's got a lot of stuff going on. I don't know him too well actually. We're kind of just meeting off of this, so it's kind of going to be a learning process for me as well. Stephen, from where we're at right now, I just kind of want to start back. If you could go over, first of all, like where you're from, what got you into that military life and everything.
Sure. First and foremost, let's thank Jared for throwing me in front of the bus on this one. Our mutual friend. So, born and raised in Chicago, outside Chicago. My dad was an immigrant from Ireland. He was born in Ireland and then raised here in the United States. So, on his side of the family, I'm first generation Irish in the States. Moved around a bit in the suburbs of Chicago. Dad was a teacher, high school teacher all of his life, 30 some odd years he did it. And I did not apply myself in high school and was kind of going down the wrong path, just being rebellious and being stupid and thinking that I knew everything as a teenager, as we all do. Sure. So I met a Marine Corps recruiter by the name of John Nunley. I still talk to that man to this day. There's been, over the last 30 plus years, there's been some times where we, lost track of each other, but we've always found each other. I still talk to a lot of my friends that out of a graduating class of 140, there were 10 of us that year that joined the Marine Corps. And I still talk to friends of mine from the delayed entry program that were Marines from different high schools. And, those were competing high schools that we would in sports and stuff. So, it's been an amazing journey since then. I went in the Marine Corps in 1991. Mm-hmm. September 9th, 1991, I stepped on the yellow footprints out in MCRD San Diego. Damn. And then from there, I did 5 years in the Marine Corps. I got off active duty for a couple years, kind of just as a civilian, not knowing what to do, lost my way. Found after playing rugby at college, I decided to go back into the military and actually went and applied with the Army this time. And that was a decision because the time gap from, if I'd gone back in the Corps, I would have lost rank, and rightfully so. Those guys that have been on active duty deserve to get promotions and so on and so forth. So I went in the Army because they offered me the same rank I got out of the Marine Corps, which was a corporal. Took the ASVAB over again, scored higher this time. And then, they try and sell you the Fab 5, infantry armor, engineer, all that stuff. And they offered me explosive ordnance disposal. I asked the master sergeant, I said, is that military bomb squad? He said, yes. I said, sign me the F up. So here we go. So that was 99. Excuse me. Went to Fort Jackson, 12 days of processing for uniforms and paperwork. Jackson sent me to Redstone thinking that I needed to have, the way the program was established, have the BB stacker or ammunition supply point MOS for the Army. But I already had 3 Marine Corps MOSs, so that I was AWOL for the first big weekend. For 4 days, I was AWOL. And then the system fixed itself and sent me to Eglin. And then I graduated EOD school down at Eglin Air Force Base in February of 2001.
Okay. It's a long school, right? It's almost like a year or whatever down there.
It is. It was longer for me because when I first got there, the Army and the Marine Corps were like, well, the Marine Corps had a secret clearance already established for me. The Army was starting a new one. Which one are we going to use? So I sat in limbo for 6 months, which was fine. Whatever.
Did you were you sad that you didn't go back to the Marines, or was it like it was no hard feelings or whatever and you just kind of moved on? Or
in retrospect, I can say that the EOD community is the closest I've been to as far as the camaraderie of how close people are in a branch of service like the Marine Corps is. You may, in the Marine Corps, you may hate each other's guts, but at the end of the day, you're still Marines and you're still going to, put your life down on the line for each other. EOD community has that esprit de corps. It's quite amazing, and I've learned to appreciate that over the last, I'd say, probably 5 to 6 years. When I got off active duty, I stayed away from the EOD community. I didn't go to the memorials every year. I just went and did my jobs, contracting, chasing, contracts overseas, because we all had that fix that we needed, which was, I got to get back to combat. It's the only thing I know, it's the only thing that makes any sense to me, because life here in the States didn't make sense at the time at all. So, and that, as we know, as we've learned, and as we talk about it, that's just chasing that fix, or that adrenaline rush to go back to combat is nothing but, feeding into your mental health problems and everything else. So
Absolutely.
Byproducts. So,
yeah. And then how long, so you got back in 99, and then how long were you Army EOD for?
From 2001 to 2007. I did my first unit was at Fort Benning, which is now some other base, but it's always going to be Fort Benning to me. So, yeah. 89th, we did. In 0304, we did Baghdad. We were there in Baghdad for 6 months operations. Rotation was about 7 months, half in, half out. Then in 05, between getting back in 04 and then leaving in May of 05 for arriving in Afghanistan in 05, I got my team leader certification. So I ran a team in Afghanistan in 05. When I got back from that, I left the unit, knocked out BNOC, and then Staff Sergeant Academy, and then was heading out to the 21st, which is the Army's WMD EOD unit out at Kirtland Air Force Base.
Nice.
And then I got off active duty in 07.
Okay. What it sounds like from all that, I have my experience, but that was a different time. It was pretty high tempo, right? Like for those, I believe you said it was like 6-7 years. It sounds like you were going full steam ahead, like nonstop, whether it was schools or deployments or team leader certification, because I know that can be a course in and of its, or not a course, but rigorous in and of itself to try to get done.
Oh yeah.
Did you?
It was an election year. It was an election year in 04 too. So we were constantly pulling. We had to go provide. Yep. EOD provides support for Secret Service to protect dignitaries, domestic and foreign dignitaries that they identify that need protection. And we come in to from our background as explosive ordnance disposal technicians to support them in locking down venues, securing and locking down venues, so that there's no concern of explosive hazards in those areas when these dignitaries come into these locations.
Yeah. Can that be actually, I've heard mixed things, like, is that kind of fun, or is that a thrilling experience, or is it kind of monotonous after a while?
It depends. I've always enjoyed it. I've heard stories from fellow techs, depending on which politician they were on a VIP for. It wasn't as fun as it could have been. At times possibly quite monotonous, because not everybody has the same opinion of the military, and that's unfortunate. I'll just leave it at that. I'll try and be as PC as possible.
No, you know what? That's a very mature way of saying it, I guess. But sometimes you don't want to say the mature one. What led you, if you don't mind me asking, what led you to that decision of getting out?
Oh, I got myself in trouble. I had PTSD stuff going on. There was an alcohol-related incident. Charges were dropped, but the small community that I was working with at this unit had already basically made up their mind.
Yeah. And
I had received 3 Army accommodation medals in 3 years. So when I basically said, F you to the ADAPC program and decided to get out, in processing me out, they couldn't give me anything other than an honorable discharge.
Okay.
So I got my honorable. I left, immediately went into contracting. I had a couple months. I had a brand new baby and a brand new wife. But within a couple months, I was on a contract, and then right back over to Baghdad in 2008. So, and I was with a team, a collage, if you will, of skill sets that it was a soft contract, and we basically gathered real-time intel, built up target packages, took them to the regular Army, and said, let's go after these guys. And we basically hunted down and took out bomb maker cells in Baghdad in 08.
That's sick.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say if he's talking about if you don't know that SOF, he's talking about Special Operation Forces. So like,
Yeah.
they hire contractors like him. He was like his explosive expertise, right? He can help those guys build these packages of like finding where the bad stuff is, and then they all go after it. It's as badass as it sounds, and it's a crazy job. But
that was 16 years ago. We just had a mini reunion. 4 of us guys got together because one of the kids, I call him a kid because he turned 44. I'm 51 now. You know, so one of the kids turned 44, and the 4 of us hadn't been in the same room since back in 2008.
dang.
Yeah, so it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And I'm sure it was one of those things where you get together and it's like you haven't left in a while. You know, you still have the same jokes and everything.
Yeah, well, so like I had seen all of them individually, but not all of us had been together at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we had a 10-year reunion back in 18. I talked to one of my teammates, Chuck, and I said, you know, when we were down in Georgia having this little get together, I said, we need to plan for the 20th. And he goes, that's 4 years away. And I go, yeah. And it's like herding cats trying to get guys together and actually, you know, and actually get to the point where they're going to acknowledge and then freaking commit to us getting together and having a reunion. So we're trying to plan our 20th already. Yeah.
Awesome. Another aspect of that I heard you mention, because even myself, I went through stages in my life where my wife was pregnant, or, you know, we were just new married or whatever. And, you know, the Army throws something at you. But in your case, too, you were taking these contracts not out of selflessness, but you were trying to make money, too, and take care of your family.
Right.
Was that hard to balance all that out? Like being gone that long, and then, because contracting, you were probably gone for like a year or something, right?
I was actually that contract. I was only there for 6.5 months. 6 months. Wendy was pregnant at the time with our son, who's my youngest. And they sent me home early in December because she was in complications with preeclampsia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then so the docs were just waiting. Like she was being attended to and monitored. And then we waited until a certain week in the, you know. And then when she got to that point, then they induced, and we had Patrick on the 8th of January in 2009.
Okay.
So yeah. So it was cool, but again, we got married after that, and then getting back from that contract, I got pulled in for the Kosovo Bosnian War was way earlier than that.
Yeah,
I got pulled in. I got pulled in by a law firm to provide investigative work over in Bosnia for war crimes from the Kosovo Bosnian War. So we flew into Serbia. I sat in on the interviews of the survivors. Went down to Greece, Visegrad, Bosnia, did the investigation. Now, granted, it was 15 years after the fact, but then came home, wrote up my dissertation, submitted it, and then within a month or so, I was back over in The Hague and then testifying in the International War Crimes Tribunal. I was on the stand for like 5 hours. So
that is crazy. Was that like, that's a lot of, because like, number one, like you said, it was a long time ago. Number two, it's not as played up, I guess, as people, like it's one of those that people don't hear about as much, but it was still crazy important. And then 3, you're on this international tribunal. Was there a lot of weight on your shoulders, you felt like, or were you able to handle it pretty good? Or
well, as I'm sure your audience has already determined, when I get into a subject and I start talking about it, I talk pretty fast. So I think I was asked maybe 7 or 8 times to slow down in my dialogue because they were trying to translate it into 12 different languages. And the opposing counsel had their own subject matter expert who happened to be a British bomb squad guy, EOD guy. And then so like the first half hour, 45 minutes of me on the stand is the opposing counsel through their subject matter expert is trying to discredit me and take me out of the loop as far as being a qualified subject matter expert witness, so to speak, or whatever they call that.
Yeah.
I'm spacing it at the moment. Yeah. Wow. So that was fun.
I'm sure. So that's your that's directly after your contract overseas, right? Or is that like
in Baghdad? Yeah, it
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
after my overseas contract in Baghdad, and then my relationship with Wendy was kind of short lived. And then I bounced around on contracts here in the States, homemade explosives, primary instructor. I was working for JIATO, which is a joint improvised explosive device defeat organization back then. And then I took a job with a company and was over working for Siege of Sodif in Afghanistan, but stationed with Sodif West, Special Operational Forces Task Force West in Herat, out in the western part of Afghanistan. So,
Was is that a hard life? Like, cause I'm now most of me and the people around me, it's either military guys that have been in. I'm at 9 right now, so like a lot of us, it's been that or my family back home and stuff, they're all like careerist in whatever civilian sector they're in. Is it a hard way to live, like bouncing from contract to contract, or do you get pretty used to it, like, and you understand how it flows, or is there any uncertainty to it, or
yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. My my mental health and my PTSD basically ruined. And I'm not just talking PTSD from combat. I'm talking about from stuff like when I was a kid.
yeah,
So my mom was diagnosed with a terminal disease when I was 8. Um, God has a plan. I'll just say that. And she happened to live. She was in and out of remission for the next 31 years, but we never knew when it was going to be her time to be called home. And at 8 years old, I know now that the impact of that, I had issues with relationships, specifically with women, because here I am 8 years old and I didn't understand why mom would be taken away from me.
yeah,
So fast forward, other trauma, PTSD, whatever. It has played a part in every failed relationship I've ever been in.
sure,
And no matter how much I've been in certain relationships, and no matter how much I love that other person, I was my own worst enemy. I'll say that.
yeah,
I've never owned a home because I've been chasing contracts.
yeah,
Fast forward to 2001, it got so bad, like in a 9-month, like really hard downward spiral over toilet bowl. I found myself back in my father's house in Chicago, in the suburb of Chicago, and I had the gun on the bed sitting next to me, and I made one attempt on a phone call, and thank God they answered the phone call. So
that's awesome. That
went and saw mental health within the next day or two.
good.
Yeah.
That is a lot of people with them, especially. I have a lot of people that aren't military that listen, and I'm sure it always seems like when you hear PTSD, it's like something from a war or whatever. A lot of people, like, the worst thing you went through is the worst thing that you went through. So, like, a lot of these things, like the factors of childhood and stuff, they don't emerge until later, even, and then they compound on that other stuff you're doing. So then
Right.
it all can just spiral out of control so fast. But the good part I like to hear is that somebody actually picked up the phone for you. We just had from my last unit in Missouri, the S1 clerk. He passed away. It was like a month or two after I left, and he's a great soldier. Like, it's so sad to hear, and it happens. As well as I do. Even the EOD community, it happens like crazy.
Yeah.
And you always ask that question, why? Like, what the hell? But you really wish they would have picked up the phone. So I'm really glad that you were able to actually get someone on the phone with you and actually go get that help.
So, I mean, it's this coming June will be 4 years. So maybe there's enough space between, June 4th of 2021 when I made the phone call and the healing that I've been working on and the mental health therapy that I went through and such, where I can make kind of a joke about it, because the person that picked up the phone was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." "Are you going to harm yourself?" "Absolutely not." I'm lying out my teeth at that point,
Yeah.
But the conversation steered itself, and I will always credit that phone call for kind of, it's my restart.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I won't say I'm an imperfectly working on today.
That's all you can ask, is that you get better every day, man. That's the goal, you know?
Yeah, and just never giving up. And I find strength for myself in helping others and trying to build them up. So
Yes. Yeah, I do see. It always pumps me up. When I first added you on Facebook, I noticed every day it started popping up that you post the Pledge of Allegiance every single day.
every day.
And it pumps me up so much when I see it. I'm like, because you don't have as much like, what do you call it, patriotism going on as much lately because it's so divided. No. It's nice to see like that just little act of patriotism. You're like, hell yeah. And to do that every single day, obviously, you're driving yourself. It's little things like that when people drive themselves to do those little things, it compounds into bigger stuff, and it affects others around them.
Absolutely.
Do you I noticed too, you go to you've been going to the memorials, like you said, the EOD memorial, because that's kind of a big deal. Are you involved in anything else like going on around you, or are you pretty busy with your, like, I guess we kind of jumped around it a little bit, but in 21, like, have you still been contracting? I know you said you just started that new job, but were you still contracting throughout that whole thing, or?
No, I actually, that downward spiral, I actually, I got myself in trouble again the next month. So I got myself in trouble. The next month after that, was a massive fire at the place that I was living.
Yeah.
And so Sunset Village in St. Roberts was burned to the ground on 13 February into the morning of 14 February of 2021. 43 units were displaced. I lost everything, lost my identity. I say that now, but in retrospect, again, here you look back at the past to fuel yourself to move forward. The materialistic things weren't my identity. I am my identity.
Yes.
But I didn't have access to, like, I lost my phone. I lost my sidearm. I lost everything that I had brought to Missouri for that contract that I was working at the Counter Explosive Hazard Center there on Fort Leonard Wood. I lost everything. Literally showed up at my boss's house, who's a brother of mine for like the last 15 years in the EOD community. Showed up at his house with just the clothes on my back.
Wow.
So that happened. The next month, or the month prior, I got myself in trouble. That happened. Then the month after that, I broke up with the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, discarded her, kicked her to the curb. The next month after that, I quit my job. Then I went and I went on just a frenzy bullshit thing in Texas and then back down in Arizona, hanging out with friends and just getting smashed and stupid. Surprised I didn't get in any trouble back then in those 2 months. But then I ended up at my dad's in Chicago, went to mental health after the June 4th phone call. And when I started mental health on July 4th weekend, it was that therapy lasted until the middle of December.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, COVID's going on. So I'm doing offsite kind of like this Zoom calls or whatever, that the VA was having for us, and working through they sent me, so they mail you their book that they want you to go through, and you got to, every week is something new, and you got to do your studies and your reading and your self-reflection. And I was in cognitive behavioral therapy. So during that time, I met on one of the private groups in Facebook. It's called Vetrepreneur. I met a Navy veteran who has a coffee company, and he wanted to expand his volume for his business. So he started with a white bag program where it's his coffee, his insurance, his brand name, but we slap our labels on it. And that's how I started with my business associates. That's how I started Master Blaster Coffee, which led me back into the community for the EOD community, because we launched on December 14th, 2021. And within the first month, I'd say we were in the black.
Wow. Well, that's how it is with businesses, those startups, though. It's kind of hard to initially get it.
So, and honestly, it's a hobby at the moment, because I still work I'm on a government contract here in Virginia now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the snail space thing moving forward with it. But what it has done, and I'm so blessed in this, is that it's allowed me to get back into the EOD community, be a sponsor for the EOD Warrior Foundation's Memorial Weekend. and really interact with the community and trying to be there for them, lift others up, provide support. One of the things, so I've gone to 3 of them, and the last 2, the company, Master Blaster Coffee, has sponsored a White Star survivor to come to the memorial because their spouse had committed suicide at some point in time, and letting that White Star survivor know that they're still part of the community.
That's fantastic that you were able to provide that support, but that's awesome that in general that the community has that own support for their kind, that's awesome. Let me we're going to take a short break real quick, and then we'll jump back into that cuz that's some interesting stuff. Okay, so you were telling me about, you were able to actually sponsor that, so the Silver Star or White Star family.
White Star survivors, yeah.
Right. And then it's still running as like, it's just like you said, snail's pace and stuff. How do you navigate balancing that with like the career? Is it kind of like a side thing where you can kind of do it off to the side, or does it take up a lot of time? It is. Okay.
Yeah. So we use, right now we're using Shopify as a coffee storefront, e-commerce based, a coffee company. We've got pages for the coffee shop or the coffee company on LinkedIn, Twitter, which is now X, Facebook, and Instagram. And so we have a huge presence for our Facebook page, and they're our bios. 2 of us are Bomb Squad guys in the partners that are involved in this, and so Josh and my stories are there, bios, and then we offer coffee. We've got, he's Navy, so I work with veterans across the board on everything. My roaster's a veteran, Navy veteran. My merchandise people, same thing, but they're out of Oklahoma. He's a Navy veteran, so it's a husband-wife team that do the merchandise. And in both sides of the business, merchandise and then also coffee, orders come in, and then they just drop. They take care of whatever, and then he'll roast the order, and then you got a guest.
Yeah. My wife brought me breakfast. Okay. It was just pretty badass.
That's awesome.
So you were the roaster, you said, right?
Yeah. So he roasts the coffee, whatever the order is, and then he drop ships it, puts it right in the mail to the customer. The same. My merchandise people do the same thing, so that way I didn't have to turn Dad's garage at the time
into a whole coffee shop. Yeah.
Do all that for myself. So we've been going strong, and with the economy in the last year, sales are down, but I'm just glad people are still buying.
Absolutely.
And again, there's no overhead. I've got no employees. We're making money. We are a for-profit coffee company, but we are tied to the EOD Warrior Foundation's community, and that's our biggest sponsor. We sponsor them. That's our biggest nonprofit that we interact with. So very happy about all that.
Absolutely. I even checked out the website yesterday, and it's like a very smooth website to go over. Like, it's easy to order and everything. It's pretty awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I was going to ask your opinion too, with how you obviously were heavily involved in the GWAT, and that's coming kind of, I wouldn't say dwindling down, but large scale affairs, it's definitely scaled back, obviously. Do you see us becoming like that Garrison type thing again from the 90s, or do you see us like shifting, or what do you think about that?
I think that there are certain job skill sets within the military that are going to be very busy, continue to be very busy moving forward. But for conventional forces, the training in multiple branches of service is geared towards whatever that threat is assessed on the horizon in the future. But yes, we seem to be going back to a lot of the Garrison mentality.
Yeah, the
Cold War, post-Cold War Garrison mentality.
Yeah, so, the hot shit word right now is LISCO, or the acronym LISCO, and LISCO, and it's and you hear it and you're just like, but it has its purpose, I guess, but it's just odd because everyone for the past 20 years was trained on a specific, like, small tactics and stuff, all this stuff going on, and now it's these giant navigation tools. And like, I think it's hard for especially like the EOD community, the soft community, like all these high speed units, like to shift to that, or because they're still doing some of the other stuff, whereas the
Right.
rest of us
Well,
are like, it's definitely a different mentality.
Well, so interestingly enough, obviously SOF is very busy. EOD, which is technically under Army, EOD's combat service support. Here's
Yes.
the difference with our job. We do our combat mission every day of the week. What I mean by that is training is happening. Say, let's go back to Fort Benning, which is infantry training school for the Army. There's privates that go to the grenade range and practice throwing grenades because that's one of the things that they need to learn as part of their combat arms stance and presence in the United States Army with that job skill set. So we get called out, or we used to get called out all the time when a grenade wouldn't function.
Yeah.
When the piece of ordnance would not function properly, they have to, by safety rules and guidance, they have to shut down the range. They got to wait for us to get out there. We have our own procedures, wait times and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we take care of whatever we got to take care of. Now that's technically that's an example of a real combat mission for us.
Yes.
Yes. So range clearances, so that way other units can go in and do training in ranges, or range control can come in and revitalize a range and change up a range based on new training protocols that they have. So we have to go in and clear out all the explosive hazards so that they can work in the area, move targets, change out targets, whatever. I mean, that's what we do. And that's in all different branches of the service.
And yeah, because on our side, anytime you go to a range or whatever, and it happens every now and then, there's somebody's checking the range and they find this unexploded ordnance, and then you're like, oh, we got to call EOD now. And then you're mad because the range gets shut down and stuff. But that is the protocol. But it's exactly like you said. That is, it transcribes a little bit to what's going on overseas and stuff. It's unexploded ordnance, just in a different fashion. And you got to handle it. So you guys are always doing your job. Like it's
an explosive hazard that has to be removed for the safety of the people that are involved in the training or the actual combat mission overseas.
Yes.
So yes. Yep.
That's exhausting.
You say it's exhausting, but I'm here to share with you. It's the most amazing job I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And I have, as I think people can understand as we've been talking, there are so many different facets to the job.
Yes.
It's not just going down range and taking care of a grenade. It's supportive missions in combat zones. It's supportive Secret Service here stateside. We get called out by local law enforcement because a 90-year-old World War II veteran, nobody asked any questions, but back then he brought a Mark Deuce grenade home, and it's been sitting on his mantle on the fireplace since he got home from World War II. And now he's passed on and his wife wants it out of the house. We get called out on that because it's military ordnance. So, I mean, or they find a cannonball from the Civil War and we got to take care of that too. I mean, it's just, there's stories all the time, even in Europe, where somebody was out plowing their field and they dug up a piece of ordnance and it exploded and it injured or killed the farmer.
Yes. It's there's a billion stories of it in the people don't hear about it. Maybe it probably doesn't get as publicized as much, which is probably a good reason. But in the States, like that, exactly what you said, people just brought home stuff or they were a collector or some weird shit, and it's sitting around their house, and then finally people find out and they're like, oh my god, we got to take care of this.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Now, finally, to where you're at now, you're directly involved with developing we talked about it for a minute. It's like is it the doctrine for the teams right now, or can you talk about that, or I don't know if
so it's unclassified.
Okay.
I work for an organization, an entity on Fort Gregg Adams, which used to be Fort Lee.
Yeah.
In the EOD community that is involved in training. I'm a senior training developer. So on my side, we provide the tasks and everything for proper training as we are projecting between now and like 2030 or 2040, 35 and so on.
Yeah.
It's forecasted training that needs to happen doctrines on the other side of that, but still within the same organization. And both entities work cohesively to try and get to meet the requirements that the Army needs, or that the EOD community is going to need in the Army EOD field. So that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Do you like that side of it where you're more involved with like the technical aspect as opposed to like working hands, like, you know what I mean?
It's great to be around EOD technicians again.
Yeah.
There were only a few of us at Engineer Land in Fort Leonard Wood.
Yeah.
So and those, don't get me wrong, I've worked with great guys. Whatever their MOS is, I'm just making fun of it. I've worked with professionals from every single job there is in all four branches of service, and also, 3-letter agencies. It's good. There's a huge presence of former and active EOD technicians where I'm at. It's great to be around them. The work is interesting. I'm still learning from drinking off of a fire hose type thing. Yeah. The only problem I have with it is my body at 51 is not liking the desk environment, so to speak, because I don't move around so much, so therefore I'm getting stiff, and I'm at the age now. I'm dealing with some medical stuff for myself, trying to figure out what's going on. But my arch nemesis are my socks right now. So that's where I'm at 51 years of age.
Yeah.
So that's where we go.
What with all this, obviously you've led this incredible life at this point with ups and downs, getting through all of it to where right now, you're thriving, you're doing good, you're better than you were before. Yeah. What would you say to those guys? Like, there's guys on the fence, they want to get out, or they're overwhelmed with anxiety and stuff because they don't know where their career is going, or what would you say to them?
I'd say so therapy is it's a unique item in the sense of people will not do it until they're absolutely ready for it. And that looks like something different for everybody. I didn't hit therapy or open myself up to therapy and say, okay, I have no other options. I can do this, until I hit rock bottom.
Yes.
So
I think that's common for a lot of people.
Exactly. Let's talk about the last 10 years, 12 years. It's become a more open topic with less negative impact for those that are still on active duty, for them to actually seek out time for themselves to get mental health.
Yes.
And what I mean by negative impact, they realize that this is something so that this person can go back to their job and do their functions and not have a meltdown, not have a catastrophic moment in time where they choose to end their life or something else. And the time and effort that has been invested in that individual to this point is worth them taking the time for themselves to make sure that they get out on the other end of this and they're okay.
Yes.
Or at least have a purpose or strength or some type of a structured way to help themselves move forward.
Yes. Do you no, I just yeah. I'm calling out Army things again.
That's fine.
The only part I worry about, which I'm sure you can attest to, maybe because do you go through the VA for yours, or is it outside of that?
I went through the VA for mine.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I got a funny story about this. It wasn't funny at the time, but it's a funny story now. I finished my mental health with the VA, and I was sitting at 70% disability.
Yeah.
And I finished my therapy with the VA. That's the quickest letter I ever got from the VA, was the letter coming to me saying, "You've shown improvement with your therapy, so we're going to downgrade your benefits." As though this is a broken arm that mends itself within 6 weeks. And I lost it. I absolutely lost it. And thank God I was in Illinois, because through the VFW and through the American Legion, I was able to find a program for veterans out of the University of Illinois Law School at Circle Campus, which is up in Chicago. There's a program within that law school that they, for no charge, they help veterans deal with VA type issues.
Oh, wow.
And they fought for me against the VA, against the system, because the system, as we know, is broken.
Yes.
It works better in certain areas than it does in others. But they fought for me, for them not to downgrade my benefits and ultimately to provide for me what I was asking for.
Yeah.
Which was reevaluation, which I did, to get a higher percentage. Not that it's not the money. 20 years from now, when things surface, because it takes time, I want the VA to take care of this because it's combat related.
Yes. People don't like most of the guys that are trying to get this help. It's not about like trying to get all this money. Like obviously there's outliers that are all in it just to get money, but most people are just trying to get their asses covered because like you said, 50, 60, 70 years old, I need assurance for this, that this is going to get helped because my military time caused a lot of this shit. So
right. So I'll throw one out at you just to use this as an example for what I'm describing. There's been a massive push in, I don't know how many years now, but it's kind of surfacing because I think they've gotten so much, they've done so much research and things are moving in the right direction. They're trying to make exposure to blast overpressure when a detonation goes off. That exposure to blast overpressure is a cumulative effect. What I mean by cumulative effect is it doesn't go away. You'll never be at your baseline again. It's like being exposed to radiation. You can only reach so much exposure to radiation in your lifetime before you can't be around any type of radiation ever again, because once you go past that threshold, you're going to start melting from the inside out.
Yes.
So that's huge.
Yes.
That's huge. And to make it, they're pushing to make it one of those defining factors within the VA system so that it's tangible to have that on your disability rating.
Yeah.
To give it a rating. Now, how does that help? I have no idea with all the thousands of times, how many, being exposed to blast overpressure, what that's going to do to me on a molecular, cellular level. Does it mean I'm going to have dementia, because of all the brain activity and stuff? Does it mean I'm going to have dementia when I'm 85, if I live to 85? My point is that if that's rateable and you can put it and I qualify for it, if I start losing my mind, then and it's contributed to blast overpressure, then my family doesn't have to sit there and pay out the wazoo, or I don't have to pay out the wazoo when I'm losing my effing mind and they're trying to take care of me.
Yes. And it helps those guys in the future, like 20, 30 years down the road, the new guys that now, hey, you can only be exposed to this much, or unless mission dictates or something, like that's not just EOD, that's engineers, that's anybody dealing with any type of blast pressure, because that happens a lot more than people think in the military. Like it's a very common thing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So super excited about that. Not trying to be a spoiler alert or whatever, but God bless the men and women that are involved in this and trying to set that record straight. So
yes,
it's a good thing. Yeah.
I think the other thing I saw that personally that's a harder part is what you were talking about. They've identified that it needs to be helped. The system hasn't caught up in active duty either to where there's enough BH to go around. So then you end up like, hey, I do want to go talk to someone. Okay, 3 months is your next appointment. And you're like, well, okay. But so I applaud those VSOs though, the veteran service organizations. They are working so hard to provide people with alternatives at little to no cost, and that is a huge push, and it's great. I can't thank you enough for actually coming on here and talking about that, because it can be hard to discuss those things. Some people, I think we're, like you said, we're getting to a new generation where people are wanting to discuss it not for selfish reasons. They want to help others, like yourself. You're putting it out there so others understand it is okay to go get help, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you. It's okay to not be okay. Is what it boils down to. Yeah. Absolutely.
Steven, you came on here, you told us your entire story, and I can't thank you enough. I know other people, if they hear this, take what he said to heart, because he's a good dude, and he, like, obviously his work speaks for itself. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on here. and talking to your life
It's
about
been
me.
an honor, Ben. Thank you very much for allowing me to come on and share the stories. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
God bless.